The election is over. One person was elected president and one was not. Half the country is elated and half is distraught. We knew that whatever the outcome, some would be thrilled and some would be devastated. We've heard from LGBTQ plus people who are in deep despair, in existential fear. And we've heard from parents who are bewildered, saying, my child is so angry with me, they'll no longer even speak to me. We have always known about the deep divide in families, and this election, far from solving anything, only seems to have deepened the fracture. Let's talk about this today.
Would it be okay if I were to tell you that I am afraid someday? So I call you up and you call me down. Would it be okay?
Well, hello and welcome to the FreedHearts podcast. My name is Robert Cottrell and I'm here as always with
Susan Cottrell.
Hi there.
Hi.
So glad you're with us. Thanks for joining us. Again, connect with us at freedhearts.org. Everything we do is right there. So please take a visit, poke around, click around. You might like it. Yeah. Well,
Indeed.
The election is over. One person was elected president and one was not.
Yep.
Half of those who voted are elated, and the other half of those who voted are distraught. And we knew this would happen, that really whatever the outcome, some people would be thrilled and some people would be devastated. You know?
Yes. And this points to the deep divide in our country, our intentionally curated deep divide, where we've been pitted against each other so that whatever happened, no matter what, the divide is even deeper and more entrenched. And it's a winner-take-all mentality that is not good for any of us.
Well, except for those making money off of social media.
Right,
so.
right.
Well, since then, beloved, we have heard from LGBTQ plus people, especially transgender people who are in deep despair, in existential fear. And we've also heard from parents who are confused, saying, my child is so angry with me, they won't even speak to me anymore. And they're bewildered as to why this would be true.
Yes.
And we want to say that we understand both sides of this. We understand the terror and fear and dread from the LGBTQ plus community. And we also understand the bewilderment of that fear to those who don't understand it and who don't share it.
Yes.
You know?
So we're going to kind of put on our waders, maybe our wetsuits, to venture into these deep waters to talk about this culture war, political war that has deeply divided our families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, a note here, we need to remain non-political on this podcast for two reasons. One, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And so by law, we're not allowed to endorse a particular candidate or try to influence a particular piece of legislation. We can provide information, we can provide insight, we could share facts, but not more than that. But the bigger reason for us is that we know we have listeners on both sides of this. We have listeners who supported one candidate, and we have listeners out there who supported the other. And I really like that. And I hope that continues. And based on the comments and emails sent to us, it appears to be largely the kids, and it's kids of all ages, who were generally disappointed and afraid. And their parents are the ones who tend to be perplexed and bewildered as to why this is true. Yeah. And this election, far from solving anything, has only deepened the fracture in some families, even to the point where relationships are done.
Yeah. And we know that in some families, it's the child who's saying, this is the election outcome I wanted, and the parents are the ones distraught about it. That's out there. We know that. But today, because of the emails we've gotten and the community as we know it, we want to speak to parents who are happy with the outcome and their children and broader community, broader LGBTQ community who are not happy with it.
And it's hard. We've talked about this, but it's hard to overstate the divide right now.
Yes.
Many, many of those whose candidate lost this election are overwhelmingly afraid. They're terrified, and they're unspeakably angry at those who voted the way they did. And the family who loves them is bewildered by that. And those are the listeners that we want to address. If that's not you, though, please keep listening, as I think it will help. It'll help you understand and even speak into the lives of those for whom that situation is true.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if this doesn't fit your family exactly, please understand our intent. We're not lumping all parents together. We certainly know a lot of our parents out there listening are complete allies, and you really get this from your child's point of view. But today, this is the divide we're seeing as we're framing it between child and parents. That's how we're going to speak.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, and there's a resource that you want to recommend as well.
Yes, and it's with historian Heather Cox Richardson, and it's John Stewart, and it summarizes the divide that we see, what the stakes are, as I've never heard it described better. It's really worth listening to, and we'll tell you more about that at the end, but please just stay to the end.
Our mission at FreedHearts is to change the conversation on love and inclusion and to free hearts to love and be loved. And we want to help change the conversation between parent and child around all of this and moving forward. And isn't the bottom line of everything about having our hearts freed to love authentically and to be loved authentically?
Yes.
Yes. So let's talk to the parents first, because you're the parent, and because the way we've defined the terms here, you're the one who got the election results you wanted. So it's on you, for good sportsmanship and good parenting, to seek to understand what's going on around all of this. Why is your child so afraid? And we'll try to express your child's and this community's fear, because it's raging right now. And we're going to start with a letter that we received from one of these bewildered dads who's heartbroken that his son now won't even speak to him.
Yeah, and things may not be as broken for you with your child, or they may be.
Yeah.
But this feels like a fair and representative assessment, this email, of what we're speaking into.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read that.
Yeah, the dad says what?
The dad writes, I have a 26-year-old gay son, not out, and he's passionate about LGBTQ topics, especially the presidential election. I don't like politics. I personally believe the election was not about left versus right, but is a high-level power struggle among elite power players, and that both narratives are pretty much propaganda. And he said, I felt strongly about voting to the right, which I did. I don't believe the outcome will be to the detriment of the LGBTQ community the way my son thinks it will. He is overwhelmingly angry at me for how I voted, and there's no talking to him. I accept his vote to the left without question or any hostility whatever. But now he simply despises me, and it's the worst thing I've ever experienced. I consider myself a very strong LGBTQ ally, regardless of how I voted. And to have my son disown me is awful. He said, what do you feel could be the actual ramifications and actions of this administration? Do you feel that LGBTQ rights are totally doomed at this point? And what can we do as members and allies to continue our advocacy for gay rights?
There's a whole lot I want to say.
Yeah.
A whole lot I want to say in response to that. And I have a feeling there are many of you out there that want to say a whole lot as well. But let's just take this for what it is, as a thoughtful and heartbreaking position to be in.
Yes.
And we want to help make sense of it and encourage you to just listen for however this may fit for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to answer this father's plea for his son, I want to start with a quote from James Baldwin, the timeless prophetic writer and civil rights activist. He wrote, if one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection, and listens to their testimony. I want to read that again.
Yeah.
If you really want to know how justice is administered in a country, don't question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. Go to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection most, and listen to their testimony. So if you, listening, are one of those protected members, meaning you've never felt in danger because of your sexual identity or your orientation or your skin color or your gender or other inherent characteristics, then you're not the one to judge how scary this might feel or how much of a threat may be ahead, because you're not the one who would be under threat, who would be at risk, right?
That's so good.
So the first thing for people who are not the ones who feel threatened to do is to do your work, to seek out why people are afraid and angry, which is really what this dad is asking.
Yeah. I mean, this dad may feel that ever since this child came out, it's been a learning curve, and that's been true for us, and since then, with all the learning we've done, and it's been a lot, we're constantly amazed at how much more learning there is to do.
Yes.
So, a lot more learning, so much. And especially now with some transgender family members.
Yes.
So if you're thinking out there, well, I've learned already. Why are they so mad at me? What do they want from me? Well, they want you to understand what they're afraid of now. So you've already gotten your degree in this. Well, it's now time for your double masters,
Yeah. So let me just say to those parents who have already come around a lot that it's beautiful that you accept and affirm your child.
Yes.
It is, and their relationship, their partner, and kudos for you for the work you've already done. I mean that. It's a gift to your child and your family. You've done so much to get informed and find communities that support you. But the threat or perceived threat has really ratcheted up, and it's our job to grasp why and what that means to our kids and to this community.
Yeah. I mean, we record this podcast just a little bit before it's published. We have to do that for logistics. So by the time you're hearing this, there may be additional things we could have said. But here are just a couple of examples of why our LGBTQ plus kids might feel like this new administration is coming for them. There's the issue with Sarah McBride, the first transgender member of Congress, and the order that was set down by the speaker that she is not able to use any of the bathrooms.
Yep.
Well, that's a precedent. And there's actually legislation to
I thought you said oppressive, which it is, and also a precedent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's legislation to kind of codify that into law, right? And there's the upcoming arguments on the Supreme Court case, which are happening. There's the anti-LGBTQ and anti-gender affirming care statements and beliefs of the leaders in the administration and many cabinet appointees. Now, as we mentioned last week, we must always focus on real threats versus the what ifs and what may happen. But these are real threats that have already started and I believe are going to increase.
Yeah. We have no reason to think they won't won't increase. So, I mean, just take Sarah McBride. Just imagine that your workplace made a law against you that said that you could not use the bathroom you normally use.
Yeah.
How would that feel to you? It would feel horrible. And that's how it feels to LGBTQ people and allies, because these are people that they love and care about. These are human beings, and they know that they're coming for them next.
Yeah.
That they're the ones next.
And if you don't think this is personal, when Nancy Mace, who's the congresswoman who introduced the legislation about Sarah McBride, was asked if her proposal was specifically against Sarah, she said, and I quote, "Absolutely, and then some."
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Nancy Mace said that she is she has PTSD as a sexual abuse survivor at the hands of men. That's what she said, which is tragic.
Horrid.
for anyone, Maybe the best solution for her, for everyone, is that Nancy Mace recuse herself from making laws that are out of her depth, that are in her area of PTSD, and focus on getting therapy for her sexual abuse to resolve her PTSD so that she can no longer has to live with PTSD, which is debilitating. And then she can be more whole and she can be an effective representative. Maybe that's what really is the most needed thing here. And I don't doubt that Nancy Mace believes she's helping protect women, but the facts are against her. They don't pan out in real life. And why do these men get on board for this extreme measure? These other people around her that, these are men who've never had a good track record for protecting women. Why are they on board for this law that is unsubstantiated by fact? It goes against the facts and lived experience. Why are they so gung-ho about it?
Yeah.
Because the intent is to make trans people disappear, to erase them from society. I'm not waxing extreme here.
No.
This is the truth. That's the purpose of these laws. And to say it's to keep women safe from men is a lie. It's a widespread lie. It's propaganda.
Yeah. And we've said that in order to pull people together, nothing works better than a good enemy.
Yeah.
And right now, the transgender people are a really good enemy for a certain side of this
very
argument.
Convenient
Very
enemy.
convenient. Mm-hmm. They're not the first, and they won't be the last.
Right. And men who assault women do not dress as women, quote, dress as women, to gain access to women's spaces. That's just not the profile at all. The most vulnerable person in a public restroom when a transgender person is in there is the transgender person, period. Mm-hmm. LGBTQ people and allies have been saying this for a long time. This is based on facts, on numbers, and assaults by transgender women in public restrooms are almost non-existent.
That's right.
While assaults against transgender women in public restrooms are legion. So if this is news to you, that's part of the learning curve that we're talking about that's still ahead around this. And the continual lies around this community and leveraging those lies for laws against citizens like this is part of the reason your child and so many others are angry and afraid.
Yeah.
So I want to share with you a post from our friend, Paula Stone Williams, a transgender woman, and she posted about this law against Sarah McBride. She said, "This is the hour it became too much. I'm sitting here weeping. Republican female members of the House of Representatives are introducing a bill prohibiting Sarah McBride from women's restrooms in the Capitol building. It has begun. They are coming for us. I am an elected official. My TED Talks have almost 10 million views. I am a public figure, and I can't hide. I am frightened. Also, I removed negative comments from this post. Thank you to those who defended me before their removal. I greatly appreciate your words of support."
Yeah.
She's right. It has begun.
Yep.
In Odessa, Texas, a conservative West Texas town, transgender people are now prohibited by law from using the restroom that matches their identified gender in all public buildings. So community centers, libraries, airports, park facilities, and administrative office buildings, and more. Imagine going to the airport and you can't use the restroom.
Yeah.
Imagine that. So someone who may look like me, makeup, feminine clothing, would have to use the men's restroom. How do you think that would go? How safe do you think those people will be in there? Those transgender women who look like me will be in there. and someone who may look like Rob, beard, dude's clothes, would use the women's restroom. How do you think that will go?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, can you imagine Sarah walking into the men's restroom at the Capitol building?
Yeah, there's no way.
How in the world, this was AOC's point recently, is how in the world do you enforce this?
Right.
And as many people have said, you already have been peeing next to transgender people for decades, and you never knew it.
Yes.
And so are you going to check people?
Right.
I mean,
right. And they ridicule, like Nancy Mace was ridiculing that thought. But that's exactly what you're talking about now. When you people like police, bathroom police.
Yeah, and how again, and that's why there's no common sense. That reveals the heart behind why they're doing this.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with protecting women.
There's no common sense in this at all.
And the author of this ordinance in Odessa insisted he introduced it to protect his daughters and grandchildren. Well, how do you think making someone who looks like Rob go into the women's restroom protects women? Will those daughters and granddaughters nod and say, yep, that's what we wanted? No. Yeah. As one transgender person said, pleading with the council not to pass this sweeping law, this ordinance, said, it's not addressing any real problem in our community. Instead, it's creating one, making people worried about something that's just not an issue.
Yeah.
And here,
and it didn't stop there, did it?
It didn't stop there. In addition, they just put a bounty on the heads of transgender people so that anybody who thinks they see a trans person in the public restroom can sue for $10,000 plus court costs and attorney fees. Do you think the net effect will be safer communities? Also, the city can seek fines and, press trespassing charges also. How does this help anyone? Yeah. It's not an issue, and now it's become this huge issue. Do you remember in government class that we learned about checks and balances, those guardrails to protect against any one person or group from usurping too much power and imposing their will on the people? Those guardrails were for a purpose. Well, those guardrails are off now. That's what is so scary.
Yeah, and that's why too that your kids may be terrified is that with the incoming administration, people like Nancy Mace and the folks in Odessa now feel, well, we've got free reign here to do this because we're going to be supported by the federal government, by the administration.
And that's true. That's true. That's what we've seen. Yeah. The legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch are all meant to distribute power for our protection from usurpation, from being taken over by one group or one person. And, because when that power gets in the hands of a particular group who want to erase a subset of people, then we're no longer protected. Whatever the subset. Yeah. You can shift that focus to another subset. We're left without protection. And that's why Ben Franklin said what he did when he was asked, well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy? And Franklin said, a republic, if you can keep it. And a republic is designed to work for everybody, while a monarchy works only for those in the ruling class. And we can recognize the trajectory of rescinding rights of those the ruling class want to erase or punish. You don't have to be transgender or LGBTQ to see the writing on the wall. Yeah.
And during all of this, the rich continue to get wealthier, and the middle class becomes the poorer class, and that divide between us economically just continues to grow as well. So
we saw that through COVID.
And so the trans rights here, it's just one piece because they are so easy to marginalize. I hate saying that, but it's
true. The numbers are small.
Easy to marginalize. But marriage equality could be rescinded. Parental rights by of gay parents, book banning.
We've already seen that.
Health care, not just gender affirming, but anyone that's deemed, I don't know, not worth it.
Right. Well,
a little bit elderly,
and hormones,
right.
hormone blockers.
Right.
There are people that take them that are not transgender,
right,
for a multitude of reasons.
Right. Exactly. So all of this,
cancer care,
and this is
many
what,
reasons.
Yeah, that's right. This is part of what makes all of this so scary for so many people.
Yes.
For some of your kids.
Yes.
As they look to their future. I mean, I think of our kids now having their kids.
Yes.
And think, good Lord, what's this world going to be like in 50 years?
Yes. And you mentioned parental rights. Your kids, listeners, your LGBTQ kids who have those grandchildren you always wanted could lose their parental rights.
Right. That's right.
All these things are now topsy-turvy, and there's no guardrails to protect them.
And a lot of people, I mean, what kind of society says, oh, well, this law doesn't affect me directly, so, okay, fine.
Right.
Well, it's a compassionless society.
Yeah.
And we all should be concerned. We all should be deeply concerned about the lack of guardrails around basic human rights.
Yes. Yes.
And the lack of guardrails put up to control a particular administration or narrative, politically. That's why, again, that's why there are three branches.
Yes.
And so, mom and dad, you can ask your child how they feel threatened for themselves and their friends, and then listen intentionally. Yeah. And think about if that was you.
Yes. Yeah.
And we posted a meme recently on social media, and it said, and I'm going to edit this to take the language out at the end, but at first they came for the trans people, and I spoke out immediately, but even though I'm straight and cis because I've read the rest of the frickin' poem.
It's true. It's true. If you don't see that any denial of human rights of any group is a threat to all human rights, then it's need to go back to some more history. Yeah. And I talked about at the beginning about that wonderful resource with Jon Stewart speaking to Heather Cox Richardson. It's an episode on Jon Stewart's podcast, and it's really good. Heather Cox Richardson is a professor and expert on American history, and she's so listenable. Sometimes I hear the word history and my eyes glaze over, but she breaks it down where it makes so much sense. And she summarized this situation of the fear around it, and in a way that speaks for a lot of people who may not have the words for why exactly they're afraid or why this election feels so momentous, but they know that it does. And this conversation framed what this election may mean for democracy and crystallized for me what's at stake and what it is people are afraid of, wherever you stand around this election. And whether you're a parent, LGBTQ person, ally, or frenemy, please listen to this. Wherever you listen to podcasts, Jon Stewart with Heather Cox Richardson. It will benefit your understanding and your relationships. And even if you wouldn't normally listen to Jon Stewart, listen to this for your family's sake. Yeah. Please.
Now, if you're someone who's in this position right now, that your child or someone else that you care about is angry with you about all of this, where the relationship is damaged, and I know it's not easy, and we know it's not easy, and our heart really goes out to you.
Yeah.
And I hope that wherever things stand with your child or your family, that you will find healing and resolution.
Yes.
And peace.
And I think it's important to know that many of our children, many of those in the LGBTQ community, feel betrayed and hurt by those who voted a certain way. If you can try to understand this and do your work to sort out why they feel so strongly, letting them tell you as they want to without asking them to do your work for you.
Yeah.
And then if they talk, to listen with curiosity, like you want to understand without judgment and without seeking to minimize, saying, I don't think that's going to happen, which sounds like it would be helpful, but it would only hurt because it dismisses their concerns. It reduces and tries to box up their concerns. And that's not what anybody wants. I guarantee they're feeling a pulse that you're not feeling. And that's what you want to tune into. And this topic is sensitive right now. and you want to be ultra sensitive in any words you use, it's a good time to listen. Just listen. And even if they've ended the relationship with you, which I know from experiences is so painful. And the man who wrote the initial email said that. He said, my son won't talk to me. But you can use this time to inform yourself, to find out what this is all about, and let what you discovered change you. Let it shift you. I don't mean you're voting. I mean, let it help you understand and be more compassionate and less bewildered of the situation. It's in your power to do that, and it's timely to do it. It will make you a more compassionate person to understand this. Do you remember Hidden Figures?
Yeah.
It's about the 3 human computers before we had machine computers, brilliant mathematicians who could calculate anything. And they ended up being pulled into work for NASA. They're the ones who made our space missions possible. Mm-hmm. But they were women and they were Black.
This was in the 60s.
Yes. Yeah. And so they had extra...
That's a movie, by the way.
That's a movie, Hidden Figures.
Yeah, set in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah. And so they had extra enormous hurdles placed in their way. Yeah. Hurdles that were invisible to the white men in charge at NASA, as other people's hurdles are. We don't know what others are struggling with because they'd been conditioned, like everyone else, to see women, and especially Black people, as inherently inferior and limited. Well, there's a scene where Kevin Costner, the boss, confronts Taraji P. Henson, the Black female brilliant human computer, because he notices she takes little breaks when she's not at her desk. And he confronts her saying, where are you? Why are you taking breaks? Well, she tells him why. She says, because she has to walk half a mile to the nearest colored-only bathroom.
Wow.
Half a mile. And half a mile back. And she expresses a few other indignities that these brilliant Black women have endured as Black people and as women. And Kevin Costner and all the other white men in her hearing are shocked. They had no idea of any of this. Why would they? It doesn't affect them. Mm. And then Kevin Costner goes to a restroom that's nearby while these human computers, it's Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, and Janelle Monáe, are standing there watching him. And actually everyone else is watching too. And he smashes down the whites only sign on the restroom. And it makes it a restroom for all women, Black and white. How's that for relevant?
Wow.
How's that for relevant today? It's a fantastic scene. That is the response that we need right now to tear down the signs, the laws, the us versus them narrative, the teaching of contempt that is designed to exclude some people from society, to declare some people inferior and erase them from society. That's the direction we want to be going, to open our arms wider, make things easier, not harder, for people to live peaceable lives. Mm. That is where we need to be headed. Yes. And let me just pop in here. For those who use the Bible or their pastor's words or whatever to justify their views around this, there's a verse in 1 Timothy that says, pray for those in authority that we may lead quiet and peaceable lives. None of this division or proposals we've talked about has led to quiet and peaceable lives. Also, 1 Thessalonians 4 says, make it your ambition to live quietly and peacefully and to mind your own affairs. Mm. That would be really helpful right now. It really would. Instead of trying to legislate people out of existence. It's no wonder people are angry and afraid. Yeah. And determining what you think somebody's body is like underneath their clothes, if they're transgender, that is certainly not minding your own affairs.
Yeah. Again, it's no wonder why maybe your children are angry and afraid.
Yes.
You know, we hope you find peace and reconciliation, if that's possible. And we hope you listen intentionally listen to hear and understand. Be patient and do your own work, even if you have to do that work alone because the relationship is currently broken. Do your own work. Continue to try to understand because that will change you. Deeper understanding is something that always changes us for the better. And if we can help you in any way, please reach out to us. If you're a parent, if you have questions, if you don't understand, reach out to us. We will walk on this journey with you.
Yes.
If you have parents, if you're listening and you have parents on this, again, reach out to us. We'll walk on this journey with you. Yeah?
Yeah. Send this to your parents.
Yes. Yeah. So before we close today, we want to remind you again about Winnie, the book based on Wicked. Again, we saw Wicked recently, and it is spectacular, beyond spectacular. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And again, you wrote a book, Susan, a short story about a girl named Winnie, who in the book, she's a teenager in an abusive family.
Christian family.
Yeah. Yep. And it was, in the book, it was the soundtrack of Wicked that helped her survive intact.
Yeah.
And you wrote it back when the show was on Broadway and our kids were still at home. And we just loved the soundtrack. And this was even before our kids came out and before we'd really thought through much of anything about LGBTQ.
Yeah.
But we witnessed so many Christian parents who just drove their kids into the ground for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Because they were somehow not as expected, or not as hoped. And you were inspired by the story of Wicked and by the music. And you wrote a book called Winnie. And now that the movie's out and doing well, I hope you've seen it 10 times by now. We're making this book available to you, our listeners, as a free PDF download. It's on the books section of our website, and you can just go there and download it for free, or just email us at podcast@freedhearts.org, and we will send it off to you. Again, it's called Winnie, and you will love it. So the next 2 Wednesdays, which is our normal podcast day, are Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So we will be back with you with a brand new episode on January the 8th. Beloved, we love you. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are not alone.
Yes.
We'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Would it be okay if I were to tell you that I am afraid someday, so I call you up and you call me down? Would it be okay?
You've been listening to the Freed Hearts Podcast. We have extensive resources and vibrant, inclusive community for you at freedhearts.org. Please just come say hello. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for the podcast, just email us at podcast@freedhearts.org. Audio engineering is provided by Luke Johnson. The music is provided by our daughter, Hannah Cottrell, who is Grammy nominated. You can find out more about her and her music at hannahcottrell.com. Please share, subscribe and follow on your favorite platform, and support us if you can. Thanks for listening.